And here's the truth. If someone loves you, they will never put you at this level of financial risk. Never. They will not destroy your credit. They will not drain you dry and walk away without guilt. This wasn't love, this was selfishness. Then one day, whilst he was out, she saw a text message that he had sent to a friend. It said, she's broke, she's not going to use her credit, I'm done. 5 years together, and that was it. I mean, the level of calculation here is just chilling.
I don't even think they said in the documentary, I was actually his fifth wife. I was his fifth wife. Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest with you. If someone comes to you and tells you that you're going to be their fifth wife, alarm bells should be ringing very loudly. At this point, you have to pause and think, if 4 marriages didn't work, what is the common denominator here? That alone should trigger deep due diligence. Hey loves. So today we're diving into one of the most shocking romance scam stories since the Tinder Swindler. If you watched The Tinder Swindler, a Netflix hit which featured Cecily and her $250,000 romance fraud nightmare, then you already know how deep these online dating scams can go. After the show blew up, victims from all over the world started reaching out to Cecily for help. In this new Netflix series titled Love Con Romance, Cecily, with the help and support of a private investigator, Brian Joseph, has now turned her trauma into a mission, helping victims to track their romance scammers, collecting evidence, exposing these criminals, and helping victims fight for justice. In this series, we meet about 6 people who were pulled into these elaborate romance frauds. Some lost 50,000 and others millions. And the emotional damage, just as devastating, because for many of them, this wasn't just a scam. This was someone they thought would be the love of their life. But one victim story hit me the hardest, Shariza Jackson. Her case is the biggest financial loss in the whole series, $2 million. All at the hands of a man calling himself Dr. Dorian Wilkinson. He told her he was a medical doctor. He convinced her to help him launch a cosmetic clinic, and by the end of it, he disappeared, leaving her drowning in $2 million of debt. After watching the show, I couldn't stop asking myself, how did this happen? Were the red flags not obvious? Did she ignore them? Or was the scammer simply that calculated? As I pondered on this question, I stumbled upon a video by a YouTuber, Jessie Woo. And honestly, she asked the exact questions I had in my head whilst watching the show. So in this video, I'll be breaking down Shariza's story, summarizing what happened, and analyzing some of her responses from that interview to understand how a scam of this scale even unfolds. Unfortunately, guys, I can't show actual clips from Netflix due to copyright restrictions, but I will have relevant images on screen as we go along. Before we get to the financial part of this crime, we need to understand how Dorian got so close enough to Shariza to pull off this whole thing. They actually met years ago in high school. She was a freshman and he was a senior. According to her, he was a popular football player and a classic ladies' man. They barely interacted back then and they went their separate ways. Life moved on. She became a teen mom of 2 by the age of 19. And she spent the next decade grinding, working her way up as a business consultant, determined to give her daughters a solid life. So she was a hard worker. Out of nowhere, he reached out to her on Facebook. At this point, she's in Florida and he's in Atlanta. He tells her that he works at Emory Hospital as a medical doctor. And of course, that alone is impressive. High status job, stability, security. On paper, everything that most women will look at and think, seemed promising. For their first date, he showed up in a Bentley. He was in his medical scrubs. He asked thoughtful questions about her life, her work, her journey. She said he made her feel seen. But really and truly, knowing what I know now, him asking her about her life, her career, what she does, her status, it was only merely assessing what he could gain. He wasn't interested in her. But at the time, she felt seen and heard. Then came the love bombing. He made her feel like a queen. Flowers 3 times a week, rose petals, romantic gestures straight out of a Hollywood script. Shariza even said that he was doing things that you only saw in movies. And right there for me, that's the moment I paused. Because if it feels like a movie, if it feels too perfect, if it's too good to be true, then 9 times out of 10, it's not true. It's not real life. It's a performance, and it's one of the biggest red flags in romance fraud. Now, here's where this story becomes even more heartbreaking, because this scam didn't just target Charitza, it touched her entire family. Dorian was introduced to her 2 daughters. These girls had never had a stable father figure because both of their fathers passed away when they were young. So imagine the impact of a man who suddenly shows up attentive, present, supportive, and invested in who they were as young women. For them, this felt like the father they never had. Charitza's family grew to love him, including her father. They believed he was the one for her. Everything looked perfect from the outside. After a year of dating, he wanted exclusivity. He wanted to move to Florida. He wanted to move into her home with her and her girls. And of course, because everyone was happy and life seemed stable, she agreed. But then the story shifts. He starts talking about opening a new medical surgery in Florida. And the next thing you know, he asks her to take a $100,000 business loan for his practice. He claimed his credit was damaged from paying off his mother's medical bills. Charitza said no to him. She said she wasn't comfortable with that because they were not engaged to each other. And guess what? In classic scammer style, he proposes to her. He even contacted her father beforehand to make it seem legitimate. And when you watch the footage, Charitza seemed unprepared. She seemed shocked. In that moment, she felt pressured to say yes because she was surrounded by her friends and family who were urging her to go ahead. And that's the thing. Friends and family will only see what you project out there. Whilst preparing for this and looking at the lovely images that Charitza and Dorian took, they looked happy. They would have probably posted these on social media, and a lot of their friends and family would have thought that she was happy. And that's the thing. When we're consuming these pictures on social media, we have to be very careful because things might not be right behind the scenes. Friends and family encouraged her because they both looked happy. That was a picture that she painted. So it's important for you to be true to yourself when you're in a relationship with someone. Anyways, she was pressured. She said yes. And to me, at this point, the motive was clear. He had asked her a month ago for $100,000. She said to him, no, we're not even engaged. And he proceeds to propose to her. To me, he had clear motives. Another red flag. And not long after that proposal, of course, he pushed the financial request again, to which she gave it to him this time around. They moved forward with the wedding. According to her, it was stunning. They had around 150 to 200 guests, a beautiful celebration, and a moment that felt like the start to forever. And it wasn't long after the wedding that she took out the loan. Together, they set up a cosmetic surgery center in South Florida, a business she believed would be part of their shared future, and he promised her that all this was for their future. Except it wasn't. The business was called Best You Now, a cosmetic surgery offering BBLs, lipo, and other aesthetic treatments. And from the outside, it looked like things were booming. But behind the scenes, the expenses were piling up fast. Dorian kept saying his credit wasn't where it was supposed to be, and so guess what happened next? Charitza started taking out more loans in her name to keep the business afloat. He made sure that everything was tied to her credit. And by this point, she was overwhelmed, but he kept on reassuring her that she'll get her money back, promising this was temporary. Then he convinced her that they needed a new home. He didn't like the current one. They ended up purchasing an $800,000 house in a gated, prestigious community. Once again, because his credit wasn't good enough, she qualified for the mortgage on her own. And to me, that's actually scary because this is a man that's not contributing anything. You both have a business. He's not contributing a dime. And then he has the audacity to open his mouth and tell you that the house that we're in, I'm not happy with it. Let's go for something more prestigious. You have a business that's not yet profitable, and yet you want to be living lavish life. And for me, this is the point Charitza should have been like, absolutely not. Can we just focus on the business? Because she was already living in a nice house. He was going for something bigger. The expense wasn't coming from his pocket. He wanted to put that burden on you. Girl, I don't know how you slept at night to have that much debt in your name. No, it's not happening. Can we work on getting rid of the debt we have at the moment? before taking on more. At that point, you should have seen that he was a selfish, self-centered man that did not care for you but himself. He didn't care for anyone else but himself and his image. At one point, Sharita actually thought she had it all. A husband, 2 daughters, a cosmetic surgery, the perfect life, and then everything started to unravel. About a year later, the clinic started to go downhill. Surgeons started leaving because they were not getting paid. Patients were coming forward with horror stories like botched Brazilian butt lifts, lipo procedures gone wrong. Complaints started stacking up. And what did she do? She kept taking out loans. At one point, she took out another $500,000 loan, all in her name. And honestly, this is where I just had to pause, because this part is terrifying. Putting that level of debt under your name, your own credit, that's life altering. Guys, seriously, I want to say this, do not play with your credit. And I'm speaking to male, female, it doesn't matter. Do not play with your credit. Do not sign things blindly. Do not just put your names on loans out of love. Love should never require financial recklessness. But psychologically, something else was happening here. This is what's known as sunk cost fallacy. And what this means is that because Sharita has already invested so much emotionally, financially, legally, that walking away felt impossible. So she kept going, hoping it would turn around, hoping it would work. But eventually, Best You Now shut down. By the end of it, she was left with nearly $2 million in debt. Loans she was legally responsible for because everything was in her name. That part alone is wild. If you do not take anything from this video, I want you to take away this one thing. Do not put your name on loans for someone else. Don't be reckless, please. Guard your credit with all your heart. Don't be reckless. The moment she finally said, I'm not taking out any more loans, thank goodness for that, his behavior changed completely. He became irrational, arguments escalated, and tensions filled the home. And here's the truth. If someone loves you, they will never put you at this level of financial risk. Never. They will not destroy your credit. They will not drain you dry and walk away without guilt. This wasn't love, this was selfishness. Despite everything she had already lost, he still pushed her to take out more loans. No accountability, no conversations about how to fix the mess he helped create. No remorse whatsoever. Then one day, whilst he was out, she saw a text message that he had sent to a friend. It said, she's broke, she's not going to use her credit, I'm done. 5 years together, and that was it. I mean, the level of calculation here is just chilling. And that's when she filed for divorce. And get this, he turned around and sued her. He sued her. The audacity. He claimed that the business failure was her fault, even though it was down to his mismanagement of the business. I mean, that's how crafty this man was. He made sure the debt was in her name, knowing full well that the liability will fall on her. But what broke my heart the most wasn't even the money, it was her daughters. These girls had never called anyone dad before him. They embraced him fully. They changed their last name, they framed it, they wrapped it up and gave it to him as a gift. The guy even cried. He cried when they gave him this frame. Imagine being so manipulative that you mislead children who were desperately looking for a father figure. Imagine. Like, that's a different level of cruelty. It's on another level. Those girls said they now view love differently. He didn't just harm their mother, but he destroyed their understanding of love, trust, and family. That kind of impact doesn't disappear. And when the private investigator started digging into who Dorian really was, that's when everything came to light. The first stop was Emory Hospital because remember, this man claimed that he worked at Emory Hospital in the ER department. According to Sharita, he worked night shifts starting around 10:30 p.m. and getting home around 7:30 a.m. But here's the thing, Emory Hospital said they've never heard of him, they had no record of him, he had never worked there before. So the question now is, so if he wasn't at the hospital all those nights, where was he? As the investigation continued, the revelations got even worse. The private investigator found out that the authorities had issued a cease and desist notice, stating clearly that he was not licensed, not registered with any medical board, and was actively misleading the public into believing that he was a medical doctor. Meaning this wasn't just a romance scam, this wasn't just a financial fraud. This man's entire life is a scam. He was putting people's lives at risk, overseeing medical procedures without proper licensing, all for money. No regard for safety, no conscience, just profit. When a private investigator informed Sharita that Dr. Dorian wasn't licensed, she was shocked. She struggled to believe it. She said no, he had certificates on the wall. And that right there goes to show the lengths he went to fake credentials, to stage environments, the elaborate lies, all to maintain the illusion. And then came one of the most disturbing revelations of all. His own cousin died at Best You Now surgery due to complications, allegedly involving an inexperienced doctor performing procedures. And according to Sharita, he didn't even go to the hospital to see his cousin. His main concern wasn't her death. It was, what would this mean for the business? His cousin left 2 young children, but he seemed unbothered. That tells you everything you need to know about this man. No empathy, no remorse, just self-interest. But the damage didn't stop there. Sharita's credit had already plummeted. But then she discovered something even more devastating. Her eldest daughter, Nikki, had been placed in $80,000 debt without her knowledge. And Nikki only found this out when the family had to sell their home and she was apartment hunting. She kept getting rejected, and when she checked her credit report, there it was, a massive debt in her name. This man didn't just steal from a woman, he stole from her child. And I'm sure you're wondering, how did he do it? How was that possible? Because I was thinking about that. Well, he was able to do it by telling all the family, his wife and her 2 daughters, to bring all their financial information so that he can keep them all together in one place. Because they trusted him and because they saw him as a father figure, they handed it over to him. And that's a lesson for everyone. Never give your financial information out to anyone. Never hand over your passwords. Never give someone else control over your credit. You need oversight. You need 2-factor authentication. Your own access, your own control. Because the wrong person can destroy your future in silence. She didn't know this happened. This confirms how far he was willing to go. No limits. No lines he wouldn't cross. When the private investigators dug further, they found out that Dorian had left Florida and was back in Atlanta. And here's the wild part. He was now working at a university, Georgia State University, as a maths lecturer. Huh? How do you go from a medical doctor to a maths lecturer? This man was a walking scam. I don't even know how he landed that job at that university. I wouldn't be surprised if he used fake documents, fake certificates to fool the university. They eventually tracked him down, and Sharita's daughters confronted him face to face on campus. He denied everything. He walked off hastily. He got in his car and he drove off. The girls went back to their mom and broke down in tears. And at this point, I really felt bad. I really felt sorry for these girls. They did not deserve this treatment. Because none of this was their fault. Their credit was ruined because of someone that they trusted. And I can't even imagine the guilt Sharita feels bringing someone into her home who didn't just ruin her life, but deeply harmed her daughters emotionally and financially. What devastated me the most about this particular case in the entire series was that despite the overwhelming amount of evidence presented to the police, nothing happened. Yep. No jail time for Dorian, no punishment, no repayment, no justice. He essentially got away with it. And that's terrifying because it means that he's still out there free to do this again. But one positive thing that came from this is that his face is out there now. His name is known, and that awareness matters. And that's why I'm bringing this story to my community, because people like this exist. And the only way to protect ourselves is to stay informed, to stay alert and cautious. Please be careful, please be mindful, and do not ignore any red flags, no matter how good the illusion looks. Guys, after watching all of this, I felt really bad for Sharita, knowing that she did not get the justice that she deserved. And I'm not even going to lie, I was annoyed. Because someone like that should be held accountable. He should have to pay the money back, especially the money he took from her daughter. I think what complicated this case more was the fact that they were married. The kids saw him as a father figure, the lines were blurred. So instead of it being viewed clearly as a crime, it almost became framed as a marital issue or a business failure. And that made everything harder. And I kept asking myself the same question over and over, like, how did this happen? Could this have been avoided? Where were the cracks? What was missed? Like I said at the beginning of the video, I ended up stumbling upon a long form interview video by Jessie Woo. The interview is about 1 hour and 17 minutes long, and Jessie Woo interviews Charitza directly. You can go to her page and watch the full interview yourself. And honestly, after watching it, I felt like I had the full picture. Because while the Netflix documentary focused heavily on Dorian, what he did, how calculated he was, I kept wondering about Charitza's side, about the blind spots, about how someone intelligent, successful, and driven could still get caught in something like this. And in that interview, Charitza actually admits something very important. She acknowledges that there were things she turned a blind eye to. For example, she mentions that she was actually Dorian's 5th wife, and that he had 8 to 10 kids. And even more recently, she discovered that he had a 30-year-old child.
I don't even think they said in the documentary. I was actually his 5th wife. I was his 5th wife. Yeah. What? 8 or I think 10 kids. Because I just found out about the 30-year-old probably like a couple months ago. There's one that I'm really cool with. I'm really cool with her, and this was the youngest daughter of him, and she never necessarily talked about him being a fraud in a sense, but it was more so him just not doing the right thing, by her daughter and different things. And once we got together, it was like, listen, I can't be with nobody who ain't gonna do the right thing. So I kind of begged her to foster the relationship between her daughter, which I feel so bad now because he has completely just he's not doing anything for his daughter anymore. Once I filed for divorce, she stopped getting child support. Yeah, he has not taken care of his children.
So for me, one of the biggest revelations from the interview was that Charitza was the 5th wife. And I'm going to be honest with you, if someone comes to you and tells you that you're going to be their 5th wife, alarm bells should be ringing very loudly. At this point, you have to pause and think, if 4 marriages didn't work, what is the common denominator here? That alone should trigger deep due diligence. And honestly, even if you're the first person someone is marrying, you should do your due diligence. You should do your research. Especially in today's world where people are meeting through social media and dating apps. You need to look into people, their past, their patterns, their lifestyle. I'll give you a personal example. I met my husband in church. He saw me around regularly, but even then, he still did his due diligence. He researched me, he looked me up online, because that's wisdom. So when someone tells you that you're going to be my 5th wife, that's not romantic, that's a warning. She also mentioned that he had 8 to 10 children and that he wasn't actively involved in their lives. And this is another point where I had to pause. You're a single mother of 2 girls. Do you understand the importance of a present, responsible father? That's something you deeply wanted for your children. So if a man has multiple children he's not fathering properly, was that not a sign of irresponsibility? If he can't show up for the children he already has, how would he suddenly become a responsible father to yours? And yet, you went on to marry him. Allowed your daughters to take his last name, despite him not being a present father to his own children. That didn't make sense to me. Because one thing about con artists is this. They may hide certain things well, but their pattern always reveals them. You have to look at how someone lives, not just how they perform. Another critical detail that was not mentioned in the Netflix documentary is that he was already a convicted felon for fraud. This was before they got married.
No, not during this process. But he's a convicted felon, and that's something else that they left out in the documentary. He's a convicted felon for fraud. He was I think you got to look at the Daily Mail article. They have his mugshots in there and everything. He's a convicted felon for fraud.
And this goes back to what I was saying earlier. Simple research, a little bit of digging would have allowed her to find that out because it was in the papers, in the Daily Mail, according to her. And this is why I'm really glad that I stumbled upon this interview, because the whole thing just wasn't making sense to me. Because I felt like the documentary was focusing on Dorian's actions, but not always on the full context of what was known, the red flags that were ignored or rationalized along the way. I think it's very important for people to know that there is a way to catch these scammers out. You just need to be alert. You can't let your guard down.
There are always signs, you know, looking back, but of course it's hindsight. And, you know, I wrote in the book, when I wrote Successful Women Get Played Too, the heart wants what the heart wants. It's definitely not out of, because I was doing very well for myself, and I don't think I'm a bad looking chick either. I work out,
girl,
I take
you
care of
fine as
myself,
hell.
and I'm good. So people, you know, it has nothing to do with desperation. It has to do with a charming ass motherfucker that just came and mirrored who I was, like who mirrored who I was, mirrored me, you know, and became the person that a woman like me would want to be with, right? Mm-hmm. So you mirrored and it was more so the heart. Like, that's kind of what captured it. It wasn't necessarily the looks or anything. It was like, you said you feed the homeless. You said you have a passion for people. That's you love God. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I'm in church every Sunday. I'm doing my thing. My daughters are praying. We do our thing. Me and my girls. It was me and my girls. And you became this God-fearing man, and you literally targeted me and became the person that you know I would want. And then I felt like he did the same thing with my father. You infiltrated my dad.
Now, Sharitza did say it was in desperation, and I hear that. But I do think subconsciously, her desire for a complete family unit may have clouded her judgment. That longing, that desire can make red flags seem a lot smaller than they really are. She also spoke about how he presented himself, the image, the illusion of wealth, making business calls in front of her whilst they were on dates, talking about multi-million-pound investments, playing the role of a successful high-status man. And to me, even this doesn't even add up. If he's making calls in front of you about multi-million-pound investment, then how can he not get his hands on $100,000? So it's just not adding up. It just goes to show that she did ignore those red flags. And she said something that stood out to me. She said it was his charm. And I noticed something whilst watching the Netflix documentary. Almost every victim mentioned charm. It was a charming man. And I want to say this to my community. Charm alone is not character. It's not. You have to look beyond the charm. You have to look beyond the gifts, beyond the words. Because there are people in this world who are calculated, heartless, and willing to destroy lives to get what they want. You really have to look beyond the gifts. I remember when my husband was still trying to get close to me, to get to know me, he came to me with gifts. I rejected them. No. Don't give me anything that will sway my judgment. Let me make my judgment based on your character. Let me study you. I don't want gifts. What is it that you're buying me that I cannot afford to buy myself? It's not pride, it's knowing your worth. When it's the right time, yes, I will accept gifts. But for now, whilst I'm studying you, no, keep it. I didn't want my judgment to be clouded. And the Bible says it plainly, charm is deceptive. If something feels too good to be true, it probably is. And that's when you don't lean in, you investigate further. And if things don't add up, you walk away, run. Imagine the hassle she would have saved herself if she had just ran from this guy. There's a point I really want to touch on, and it's the part where Sharitza said that she loved God, that she was in church every Sunday with her daughters, and that Dorian attended church with her. And I want to say this with care and not judgment. If we say we love God and we want godly outcomes, we also have to walk in godly ways, especially during courtship. They were already living like husband and wife before marriage. And one of the reasons why God warns against physical intimacy before marriage is for protection. Because intimacy can cloud judgment. It can blur discernment. It can make you ignore red flags that you would otherwise walk away from. When you give your body, your emotions, and your finances prematurely to someone, you often feel like you have too much to lose, and that's where manipulation thrives. So if we truly want godly results, we have to fully commit to godly processes. Whilst watching the documentary, what irritated me the most in the documentary was when Sharitza's daughters confronted Dorian on campus. They went face to face with him and she watched it all happen in the car. And I was irritated. I was annoyed. I kept thinking, why are your daughters the one confronting him whilst you watch? Why is the burden on them when you are the one who brought him into their lives? I was honestly furious watching it. Because as a mother, your instinct is to protect your children. not put them in a position where they're confronting someone who harmed them. But then I kept pondering upon it, even after watching the documentary. And then I thought to myself, it's possible that there were legal reasons why she couldn't. Because any normal person will want to step out of that car and say exactly how they felt. And she actually confirms this in the interview.
A lot of, the viewers and listeners are probably like, well, why didn't you go with him? So I don't know if you want to get into that, but legally I could not. I could not, because so these people, these narcissistic people, these con artists, when you start finding them out, they do whatever they can to retaliate. They hurt your livelihood, your sense of being, your reputation. They coming for your ass. They coming.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me. And that's also what happened to previous women that he did it to, because they had a lot to lose. He deals with women who have a lot to lose. And they kind of back away like, you know what? This is my job. This is my career. This is my money. I have no more resources to fight. These are the types of people that they get because they know that these people will back down. Well, this time he got the right one, right?
Yeah.
So what happened was once he got served with divorce papers, because what he said to me was, you're not going to file for divorce. You're too worried about your reputation. That's what he said. So dude, bad, like you cocky with it. I filed for divorce. 2 weeks later, he went to Miramar Police Department. And this is why I have no respect. And I'll keep saying that for the city of Miramar at this point, because he went to Miramar. I had gone to Miramar on several occasions now, letting them know, like, I'm about to get divorced.
Yeah, that was going to...
She goes on to explain that she couldn't confront him because he had reported her to the police and brought charges against her at the time. That's why she stayed in the car, and those charges were only recently dropped this year, which is just crazy. The audacity of that man, how dare he? She also revealed in this interview that he said to her that she's not going to file for divorce because she's too worried about her reputation. That sentence alone tells you exactly the type of predator he is. She explains that men like him target people who have a lot to lose, with reputations, with careers, family, stability. And just imagine the boldness, the wickedness in saying something like that to someone that you've already destroyed emotionally and financially. Oh, that is not confidence, that is cruelty. He's a cruel man. And ladies, and men as well, who have worked hard for what you have, please be careful who you allow into your life, please. Be careful who you give access to your finances, even in marriage. Be careful. If you're giving your hard-earned money to your spouse, you must understand what it's being invested in. Even if it's an area you're unfamiliar with, learn it, read up on it, educate yourself on it. Ask questions. It's your sweat, it's your sacrifice, it's your future. She also speaks about police negligence, about how the case wasn't properly investigated. And I genuinely felt for her there, because how does a criminal get to walk away free while the victim is the one facing charges? She goes on to reveal that this wasn't the first time he's done this, and that he was a serial con man who had been doing this for over 20 years. That explains why she was the fifth wife.
Mm-hmm. Now, prior to me, there was another woman that he had scammed just prior to me. Been doing it for over 20 years, Jess. Focused on my story, which is great, because, and you know, some people just don't understand that this was my story, because I was the only one to go public about it and be transparent. Yeah. Doing research, there was a lawsuit that ended up coming up that where someone who is in law enforcement, he scammed, and they filed a lawsuit against him. And it was for like $265,000 that he had defrauded this woman. And I found out, you know, that he ended up writing a letter. This is how he got rid of her. I would think, you know, trying to hurt her livelihood. He wrote a letter to her sergeant and said that she was harassing him. So it was kind of like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, resources, like people, you're hurting people's livelihood, so they're gonna back away. They're like, you know, I don't have time for this shit, I gotta move on with my life, you know. And they took the loss. The
woman before her was scammed $250,000. And here's the most disturbing part: that money was used to fund the impressive, lavish lifestyle that impressed Sharitza. Her engagement ring, the cars, the illusion, the image, all from that $250,000. So he literally used money from one victim to trap the next. And guys, one of the most disturbing part of the interview is that Sharitza said after he left her, she started to feel better. And that's when she began to believe that he may have been putting something in her food or drink, essentially trying to end her life. He had taken an insurance policy on her, so meaning that if he succeeded in ending her life, he would have received a huge payout. So it wasn't enough that he drained her financially, he wanted her life too. That is beyond evil. She was literally sleeping with her enemy, sleeping with the devil, sleeping with a man who had no value for her life whatsoever. Unfortunately, she's had to file for bankruptcy. And as for Dorian, you might be wondering what he's up to now.
I told you he was right up there with you, acting as a pastor in Atlanta, in Forest Park, Georgia. He wouldn't even believe me. Yeah, pastor now. And they're allowing him to get away with this. Gateway Restoration Church.
He's now pastoring at a church. This man went from pretending to be a medical doctor to presenting himself as a maths lecturer. And now he's presenting himself as a doctor. And that should deeply concern us because churches are filled with vulnerable people. People seeking hope, healing, and guidance. And someone like this knows how to manipulate spaces like that. His level of deception is on another level. So my message to my viewers is this. Please be careful out there. If something seems too good to be true, it usually is. Do your due diligence, do your checks, ask questions. Research people thoroughly before you allow them access into your life, your finances, or your children. I encourage you to watch a Netflix documentary and Jessie Woo's interview to get the complete picture. Awareness saves lives. Please stay safe, please stay discerning, and protect yourself and your families. If you found this video helpful, please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Till next time, guys. Bye.